next up, we're going to hear from some real businesses that are really innovating and are on this journey already. So I'm going to invite Ian Topping, Commercial Director at Allsop, Trevor Graham, Founder and CEO of Amplify, and Naomi McGregor, Founder and CEO of MoveTrue, to the comfy area of the stage, please. And while they make their way over, I'm going to play you a video. This is something that we've put together in advance of today to showcase some of our amazing businesses in Northern Ireland and the innovation that they're doing, and also a blatant plug onto how we've supported them. So Ian and Naomi, you'll recognise in the video, and we're also delighted that Trevor's here joining us today.
Allsop is an innovative software company delivering value to our customers by automating their processes. Innovate UK was something that was introduced to us by InvestNI. It was perfect timing for us as we moved into a more standard product offering, and we needed to understand our target market, and we needed to build a proper marketing strategy. So Innovate UK came along with a programme run through Queen's, the output of which was to give us a really strong value proposition alongside a really strong strategy built off the business model canvas.
MoveTrue is a wearable device for injury mitigation and performance improvements across athletes. Through Invest Northern Ireland, we were able to receive an innovation voucher, which allowed us to allocate £5,000 of funding to Ulster University Textile Department. And this actually allowed us to create our first ever textile prototype. So by being able to use the innovation voucher, we had a deeper understanding of a specific area within our business, and also took that real-time pressure off us to innovate in our area. So I think the innovation voucher just really enhanced our ability to grow as a business in a shorter period of time.
Leggy were a provider for paediatric equipment for children with additional needs. The knowledge transfer programme was found out through our work with InvestNI. Specifically, we're looking at some technological advancements in one of our main walking products. What the knowledge transfer programme allowed us to do was we were able to measure how the pedal walker was allowing the user to develop their walking skills, and a way to link that up to an app service. We had a vision of what we wanted to achieve, but probably didn't have the skills or the competencies within our teams to be able to leverage that. We probably wouldn't have been able to achieve the end goal that we did without the support of the knowledge transfer programme. We're lucky to have this type of support within the Northern Ireland industry. So I would highly recommend that every other business, if they've got a goal or they've got a project that they believe they can avail of the support of InvestNI to really seek that path.
InvestNI support has been quite broad. Fundamentally, it's supported our innovation, so it's allowed us to continually develop our product and continually offer more value to our customers. The innovation growth specialist that we were engaged with was able to listen to what we do on a daily basis and was able to translate that into a formal strategy. The greatest benefit of that was us able to communicate internally with the team why we do what we do and the value that our target market is getting from what we do.
We were first introduced to Innovate UK Age during our Innovate UK Women in Innovation Award. From this, we were able to receive support and guidance across a variety of areas within the business. We decided to apply for the Innovate UK Smart Grant because on paper it just looked exactly like what we needed, and our Innovate UK Smart Grant allowed us to start our Sports Innovation Laboratory in Belfast City Centre to conduct athlete trials, specifically in ACL research. It allowed us to grow from a team of 2 people to a team of 7 people, and the Innovate UK Smart Grant allowed us to do this. For any business that feels like they have a gap in terms of their area for pitch decks or financial support, I would really recommend them checking out Innovate UK Edge, because their monitoring can really accelerate that area within the business.
Trevor, I'm going to start with you because you didn't get a shiny video.
I didn't
Sorry
get
about that.
Yeah,
can you start by just telling us a bit about your business and what and your innovation journey, I guess?
Sure. Thanks, Kezia. So Amplify is a cybersecurity software
company. Our products help organizations to deal with that transition that's well underway now of moving from on-premise business applications to cloud-hosted business applications. We help keep customer data and corporate data safe as it transitions across the network and when it resides up in the global cloud platforms, wherever it is in the world. And our innovation journey, we've made use of and benefited from a couple of programs that were mentioned in the video, because when we started, we were, I think somebody referred to it as a bare-horse startup, but that we had nothing. We were starting from zero, and we made use of investment from private investors and from some VCs to get started. But Invest NI helped us with a get into R&D and a grant for R&D to start with, and folks like Melanie, who's here in the room, nurtured us from the get-go. That allowed us to get started, build some basic technology, and move on. And then, in order to bring some more skill into the business, we made use of the KTP program that's been mentioned, and I think Stephen's going to talk about that later on today. It's a very good program. It allows companies to get access to world-leading researchers inside the university, and allows you to bring those skills into the business on a 1 year or 2 year project to effectively to move the business forward. And then most recently, in the last year, we also applied for a SMART grant, and we were successful in getting that. And we've used the SMART grant to move our business into a different market and to build a collaboration with a US company and an Italian company that we just wouldn't have been able to do without the SMART grant to help us do that. And we're building out a capability in London. We've built a private 5G, secure private 5G network in London. And that's really targeted at governments and manufacturing businesses, healthcare, hospitals, who want to have the benefits, excuse me, of a really solid cellular network, but with the full security behind it that they need to allow really sensitive data to transition across a wireless network. So our journey, we've basically gone through the full circle of innovation opportunities as we've built up the business, and that's been really beneficial to us.
Thank you. Okay, and Ian and Naomi, sorry for making you sit on the stage while the video was playing. You did very well. It's great to have you here. Can you tell us about why you consider innovation to be an important part of your business? I think it should just work.
Okay. Innovation, as the speakers before us were saying, it's not a choice. For us to be a valued partner to our customers, we must innovate. We must listen to the current problems they have and then go upstream to find the cause of those problems and nip it in the bud. And we are doing that with the latest AI. We're looking at generative AI in order to build out. We're looking at voice, and we're looking at other technologies in order to help our customers automate those processes. But if we always do what we've always done, so we're looking to innovate on behalf of our customers to give them a better value proposition and a better customer experience for their customers.
And Naomi?
For us, it started during my master's in engineering. So the innovation piece was from the very beginning, and there really wasn't a foundation of a business to develop on. So it naturally came that it had to be innovative because it came from an idea that led into developing a business that hadn't been done before. So for us, the innovation journey was a very natural step that, we're starting from scratch. We're not starting from a traditional business. And I think that it was a very immediate for us, especially coming from an engineering background. It led quite naturally. And for us, every step of the way has been how do you innovate, and also how do you validate your innovation, I think is a very big important one that we haven't really touched on today, that how do you actually make sure that the AI or the machine learning or the data is actually good data to begin with, because innovation for the sake of innovation isn't helping anybody. We actually need a product that gives people solutions to their current needs. So how do you meet the need of the user and actually do that to make their life easier, safer, more affordable, a better quality of life? And that's the real reason of innovation, not just for the sake of it. So.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that. So how do you, and you mentioned as well about sort of solving customer solutions, solving customer challenges.
how do you understand what those challenges are in the first place and know that you're solving the right bit of the challenge? You know, do your customers definitely know what their problems are, or are you sort of solving a problem that was also created by something else? You know, it's sort of like solutions on top of solutions.
If I may.
Yeah, go for it.
I found that InvestNI is a valued partner in that validation process. You know, we're a bunch of guys and girls. You know, we're very proud of the fact we're 50-50, male-female, in our tech sector. So we get a broad spectrum from those guys. But we're talking with guys that are maybe from the age of 22 to 74 who know technology. When I go back to InvestNI with a new idea and we're wildly excited about, then we get really good challenge coming back from our client exec and from our R&D exec. They help us to validate the broader market opportunity and not just a point solution. So as Naomi rightly said, it's all about validating that your idea, which you think is beautiful and fantastic, has a marketplace and has a benefit to that marketplace. And Invest have been a really good asset to me and to also in that role.
Naomi, do you want to add to that?
Well, for us, again, probably coming from a different area, my master's had 20 different people that we spoke to and interviewed, followed by, okay, if I'm going to decline my grad job, we did 100 customer discovery interviews. And it seems like it takes time, but you actually get very different answers. But then the data comes out of them because we made sure we have a psychologist on our team, so we made sure that the questions weren't provoking them to tell us what we wanted to hear. And then the whole way through, we've been working with athletes, physiotherapists, so we've been working with people in industry and getting their feedback. And yeah, it is important to get people to challenge you. I actually love when someone challenges the business because I feel like that's the time that you can actually see how much you know about your sector, instead of it being that it's a negative. That I think you can listen to the advice, but you could also understand that you can be the subject matter expert and be challenged, and it's quite enjoyable actually.
Duly noted. Trevor.
Yeah, so I'll give you two perspectives. I'll give you our perspective and our customers' perspective. So as a cybersecurity company, we're often in the somewhat negative position of trying to explain to customers the bad things that might happen. So in fact, and it's a little bit unfortunate, but we're often leading customers saying, look, are you aware of the risks that are involved here? Do you understand what the potential negative consequences to your business might be? And in that sense, we're leading the customer towards a position where they understand the risks, and then we help them to resolve those. But the perspective from our customers, because we've been involved with lots of customers who are in the process of innovating themselves through moving a lot of their operations to new platforms that are cloud-based and reskilling their teams as they do that. And in those cases, my observation would be that a lot of companies, the imperative to do that is probably cost-based in the first instance. They've discovered that maybe a big chunk of cost in their business is around the business software and the ERP software, whatever they happen to be using. And they're driven to find something new that's lower cost and move towards that. But once they get started, they then rapidly find the advantages of flexibility and speed of innovation that they can get from modern platforms that are in the cloud and that they can adopt flexibly. And it's like a snowball. Once it starts, they go looking for more and more innovations. We've got some companies that we work with that are entirely cloud-based in their infrastructure now. They've moved everything online, whereas they previously would have had a lot of software and applications and on desktops and in broom cupboards and all around the company. So watching that innovation journey, I think that's the sort of thing where once you make the first step on the journey, then it starts to grow and they can achieve real benefits from it.
Okay, so how do you get started with all of this then? So you sort of said you've had various bits of innovation funding and support. How do you get started with it? And what was the kind of catalyst for all of that?
Well, look, I'll go again. So, as I said, we're a software company, so innovation was kind of the purpose of our company to begin with, and I recognise that. But as I said, we've seen with customers who are probably from more traditional businesses that it can sometimes be difficult to make that decision to say, look, I'm going to go innovate. You need a will to do it, and sometimes that comes from a trigger, sometimes from competition, sometimes it's from, as I say, a sort of a cost reduction imperative. But once you make that decision to get started, I would say you need to build a realistic plan about what the thing is that you want to achieve, what you want to innovate around. Because thinking about all the good support programs that are available, and you'll hear more about them the rest of today, we've heard a lot already. I think being prepared and understanding what you want to achieve before those programs get started is one of the things that you need to do. Because funding, if you treat the innovation funding as an end in itself, then you probably won't succeed. If you treat the innovation funding as a way to accelerate what you're already trying to do, or to build your business in a better way and fit that funding into the context of your existing business, you will be much more likely to be successful. And that would be my advice: is get started early with understanding how it fits in your business, and then go looking for opportunities to how to make that happen with funding and people and whatever else you need.
Yeah, I can see with so many different options that we've already shown, get a bit like, ooh, which one should we go for next, rather than to actually just sit and think about your own business, what do we need, and then let the programs fit to you.
Programs fit you, and pick the program that fits the stage of your journey. I talked a little bit earlier about us going from zero through to our current situation where we're collaborating globally. And the programs don't all fit every stage. You need to pick a program that fits. If you're at a very early stage, pick a program that fits for more R&D on the research side, and then later on in your journey, choose appropriately.
Mm.
I think from our perspective, we have significant growth plans. We have significant export objectives. We are 3 guys that own the business. We're 3 local lads. We don't have any brilliant ideas per se, but we know where we want to develop the business. And the best thing you can do is just pick the phone up to Invest NI. I now have quarterly Teams calls with my client exec, and at each call I'll explain what our quarterly plan is, and they'll dovetail in with whatever support they can provide, or they'll signpost other opportunities to look for. So everybody in the room knows where they want to take their business. Everybody has a dream and an aspiration of what they want to do. Pick the phone up, ask someone what their experience is and what they've done, and that will start to lead into a 1-page plan. We're not great 30-page business planners, but a 1-page plan will say what you want to do, and you'll have your measures on that. You'll have your vision, your aspirations, and then speak to someone who will then introduce you to someone else. And I think Steve said in Innovate, reach out, speak to other people, and ask them what's going on. And the other speakers pointed out some of the leading lights we have in Ireland, or Northern Ireland, that are exporting, and reach out and speak to those people. But it's all about asking questions and getting a bit of help and direction.
Yeah.
I think our journey again it started from 5 years of university to start a business. So there's no pot of cash anywhere. There was a need to find a way to cover me as going into this for 12 months. So that's what I said was my first way is I have to find 12 months to cover me. That first came from Invest Northern Ireland. I then found a next, increased in size pot of money from the Royal Academy of Engineering, and then we went to the Women in Innovation, and each time the money naturally increased because we went from that to then growing to have 2 of us full time, and now with our SMART grant, it's allowed us to have 7 people, to grow into an office space in Belfast. So it's partially the timing of the business as to, well, what makes sense for now? Because if I started off, moved through and applied for a SMART grant, we just would have wasted time. We wouldn't have had a 500k project given out of an idea. So it's finding the right time for that piece of funding. And then with that, it's making sure that you don't waste time with funding that doesn't suit your business. Because a lot of I think the longest point for us is after we read it, we decide, does it actually make sense to spend time applying? Because it's taking time out of your day, but also the application actually then has added that
for our SMART grant, we sent it to about 4 different investors that then closed with us because they read it. They saw that we had a full business plan as such from the SMART grant and invested that way. So I think that there's an advantage to applying, but just making sure that it matches your time commitments.
Have you ever got sidetracked going down this funding looks good, and then...
Oh yeah, there was one last year that we completely did a complete curveball because we thought 50K, there's something we kind of want to do, has nothing to do with us. And one of our team members did it. And then afterwards we got rejected and we're like, yeah, that made no sense anyway. We were like, okay, that's keeping us humble. So I think it's really important to actually just take that step back and be like, that wasn't why we're doing it. Stick to our passion area, because even when you reread it, you can see if you're not passionate about that area. So focus on the innovation that you care about. So
I think that's a very valid point. We got distracted with an Innovate competition. We had no knowledge of Innovate. I spent many hours writing the application. We were declined. It was during COVID. We got a notice back saying we wouldn't get any feedback because there wasn't the ability to do it during COVID. And in my frustration, I spoke to my client exec, who then introduced me to Innovate locally. I spoke to Tom Kenny, lovely man, and he very gently went through my application with me and pointed out why it wasn't successful, which was a humbling experience. But from there, we then learned of Innovate, and we went through the EDGE program, and then we've learned of other opportunities. But we've also learned that you should spend time identifying something that fits your innovation. If I'm being honest, the application I made fitted my commercial hat, but didn't fit our innovation hat. So if you always keep your single most important goal of continually improving at the fore for that grant application, then it's important. But if I had picked the phone up and spoke to InvestNI about the grant, then I wouldn't have wasted a lot of time putting forward the application.
Do you ever got anything to add there, or?
No, I would completely agree. As I said earlier, I think fitting the funding to the stage of the innovation is key. I think the stories that we've had here.
Have you got distracted with one, or are you?
Okay,
it's a safe space.
It's
you
always
can share,
yeah, no,
you can share with us.
It is always distracted. We've been very lucky in that we've been successful in the applications that we've actually made. But I guess we probably spent some time, quite more time than we should have done, thinking about which competitions we should apply to and how they would fit to the business. And we probably rejected more than we applied for. In fact, so but yes, I think you're. Yeah.
But that maybe sounds like, from the other's hindsight, maybe it's not a case of we shouldn't have spent so much time doing that, but maybe that actually saved you the time because you only went for the things that were really relevant.
Yeah,
and you were then successful with them. I wonder, if that's presumably
well,
shown.
Well, absolutely, and I'll go back to what I said earlier, that the process doesn't start the day that the competition gets launched or that you see the application form for the first time. If it is, then you probably aren't going to be successful. You really need to have we'd done the thinking beforehand. There were things we wanted to do, and we knew that we wanted to achieve, and I think Ian said the same thing, things we wanted to achieve with our product and with the company. And then we found the funding opportunity and went, oh right, that looks like we could use that funding to do what we want to do, as opposed to the other way around. So, the forms do take a long time. There's no doubt about it. There's a lot of work goes into an application form, an Innovate UK application form. But if you've done the thinking about your business beforehand, then you're not starting from a blank page on the day the form lands on your desk, and that means you can turn it around faster, and it's probably going to be more in the context of your business, because the form, I think we said this is it's more like a mini business plan. You have to put the innovation in the context of your business. You have to explain to the people who are going to be reading the form, that you understand the market that you're in, how the innovation that you're proposing is going to make you more competitive, and how you can market into that sector and achieve some commercial success. And that you then have a realistic plan to actually make the innovation. Do you have the right people? Do you have the resources? Do you really understand, if it's technical, do you understand the technology? And that sort of rounded, holistic viewpoint on the thing that you're trying to innovate is what takes the time to build that out. But if it fits inside a business plan you already have, it's actually not that much work.
What does take the most amount of time with applying for the funding? Is it writing the form? Is it doing that prep work? I know we talked before about sort of finding the collaboration partners.
Yeah. So for me, it's the prep work, honestly. But then it's hard to distinguish the two, because what the form is asking you to articulate is the prep work. It's the things you should have done beforehand, working out your customers, your market, your product, how you're going to apply into that. You're quite right about the collaboration. Every time you add a collaborative partner, it slows the process down, simply because when you're writing a form that's going to be submitted by a collaboration, everybody has to agree. You all move forward together. So whilst you can split various things up and say, well, look, you do these couple of questions and we'll start over here, there's no getting away from the fact that you have to pull it all back together and everybody has to agree. And just that process of iterating takes time. And if you don't already have collaboration partners before you start filling in the form, you just won't have time in the sort of timescales that most of the competitions work to. You wouldn't have time to go out and find a new partner and build a relationship and start to do that. So, yeah, I think a bit of advice for anyone looking to do a collaborative approach is build your relationships ahead of time and wait for an appropriate competition to come along, because what do you get? Maybe 5-6 weeks from a call to complete the application and get it in. You can't find a new partner and run that right through in that time.
I think it's very much a frame of mind. You'll hear people talking about, I'm going to apply for this application, or I'm going to put this application in for funding, and then it's like, oh, and you look at it negatively. If you think to yourself, there's a company I'm targeting and I want to win business with them, and then you think about all the effort you put into winning that business, you get that business, and let's say it's 100,000 revenue, and you're making 30% off that. Think of the effort you've put into getting that piece of business. Now look at the other side and look at your application for a grant or a fund of some nature, and maybe that net money that's going to come from that. And you think you can just fill a form in, you'll do it over an evening or a weekend, and it's done and dusted. But if you put the right frame of mind to it and think, what is the business going to gain from the process of filling in this? That's the greatest value, that's the greatest win. If you take the sort of history of Allsop, we were 5 or 6 people whenever we first engaged with Invest. We're now over 30 people. We have a defined business, we have a defined hierarchy or structure, within the company. And the key people that are in those roles were all supported by Invest as we grew. So we looked at our journey, what our plan was going to be for those 5 years, what our aspirational goals with regards to turnover, people, structure, etc. And then we went to Invest to get the support. And then every time, our frame of mind now is every time we look at some sort of support, does that help us develop the structure and growth of our business? Not how much is that going to give us. Get the money out of the way and think, does this meet the direction my business wants to go in? And is that support going to help me going through? And if you talk regularly with your Invest NI people, then you'll get that correct direction. And it's not a frame of mind of how long is this application going to take, or wow, this is so bureaucratic. This is helping you develop everything as you go.
I also think it's really important to get it done early, forget about it, and then reread it a week later, because then you'll completely disagree with yourself. So it's better to just get it done and don't, leaving it to last minute is the worst area, because you don't have time to get other people to read it. Like we've had monitoring officers, edge specialists, our advisors, our team, we've had various different people read applications, and somebody with a background in AI versus business versus hardware all have different opinions. It doesn't mean you have to listen to them all, but it's still really important that if they don't get the message of what you're saying, or if they read it and are confused, then the person assessing it's confused. So you can't have any confusion within the application, and that's why I think it's really important that if you've done it all, left it a week, and then you read it and are confused, then it's definitely not going to pass. So it has to be exactly so black and white, because you can't answer questions in most applications. In most applications, you send it off and there's no there's no speaking time, so sometimes the one little small thing could jeopardize the whole area of your innovation. So I think it's just being very, very clear with what you want from that project.
Yeah, so you pass it around people within your team. Do you get anybody sort of external to look at it?
Yeah, so externally we've had Innovate UK monitoring officers, NEDGE specialists, and then we also have a voluntary advisory board who have been fantastic for us, with very different backgrounds, that they would disagree with each other, which is great because then they aren't in it every day as well. So it's important that if you're in something in every day, it's very obvious. Oh, well, that massive piece of innovation seems quite small, but somebody else will highlight how important and how fantastic it is. So I think it's really important to get other people that aren't in it every day, 24/7, that don't get to see it for periods of time. They're the ones that will highlight if there's a lack of clarity.
And the language too.
Yeah.
Everyone gets into their own little world of acronyms and things that they think, oh, of course this means this.
Yeah.
I love what you were saying as well about the fact you used your application form to then go and leverage private investment too. That's so smart, like using, that's such a double win.
Well, we went back, because we'd got asked for a business plan, and I said, no, you can have this.
This is my business plan.
I was like, we've done it, we've spent the time, we've been successful. Your 30% is going to get 70% funded. We don't need to do an extra business plan, because if we go to do that, we're not working in the tech. So, and anybody that gets innovation also gets that if you've already done an application that's been that successful, you don't need to waste time to write another business plan and be moving your brain from business side to the technology. So that was, it's great that we have the right investors that also have came from a background of innovation, that understand that it's not about ticking boxes in terms of innovation, it's actually innovating for the right reasons, having the validation. Innovate UK validation is a big validation, to have had specialists assess it, and then to have people from private to then put their money in as well. It has been a big strength.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you think that having that smart funding give you the sort of credibility as well as having a sort of pre-made business plan?
Oh, absolutely. We know the success rates for both of our Innovate UK funds are very low.
Yeah.
And because of that, the investors that we got from within the UK, they knew that as well. So if we were for them, that was a part of the due diligence, that they got extra funding to invest in us. They got the understanding of the technical was asserted by them and commercial, and then for a lot of them, they then came on with outside investors. So half of our investment is actually not from the UK, it's from the US. So with that, it's allowed us to have UK investors also advocate for us to say, this is actually a low success rate, and you're going to get more money with it, because it's not common within the US system. So I think that's a massive strength that we need to actually advocate for in the UK, is how much funding, non-dilutive, that we can get instead of having to go for a lot of dilutive funding, which is more so the US system.
Yeah, so your grant gave you the credibility with the UK investors, and then the UK investors helped with the US investors. So you can see, like, each thing is giving you like a little bit more momentum along the way. Okay, and I want to switch it over a little bit now. I'm thinking about it. We've got a lot of, we've got people from Innovate UK here on the funding side. We've got some Invest NI people, and the support ecosystem covered. What advice, or what would you tell us? What would make your lives easier? What would make these programs better for you? You've got a captive audience, so. Yeah.
I'd say a couple of words. Just firstly, I think both Invest NI and Innovate UK do a really, really good job of providing assistance. You know, I think everybody from the monitoring officers through to the local team here, the Edge people, everybody's done a really good job. Invest NI, as Ian has said, are really good at signposting the way to lots of funding opportunities. I think if I was to pick one thing that I would say that would help from very narrowly thinking about innovation funding, it's what I mentioned earlier about the timescales. It's often the case, particularly for themed competitions, which really don't come around all that often. You know, a theme tends to get funded once and maybe not funded again for a long time. A little bit more advanced information that those are coming would probably be helpful, because, as I said, you really need to do the thinking before the form hits your desk, otherwise you just won't make it, especially if you need to go out and find collaboration in a university or from another organisation. So getting some more advanced notice, maybe a sort of roadmap to where funding is going to be applied in the future would be useful, although I understand that's quite a difficult ask as well.
We're just taking notes, right, Steve? We can't promise anything, but we're taking notes. Ian?
I think if I look at the challenges facing Allsop today, and my role is commercial director within the business, so I'm very keen on the growth of the business. Innovatively, we're leading the way in the technology that we're delivering. We're delivering autonomous planning in a supply chain. So we go right back to the source and we generate what we know is going to be needed before someone asks. So we're getting the tech right, we're getting really good support from Invest on the tech side of things. The challenge we're facing is how we break into the export markets and how we grow within the markets, the outside world of UK and Ireland. So if there was something that could help us with those challenges. The other challenge we find is we're dealing with mid to large businesses, and they tend to have a crutch, for a want of a term, of where when they're going to make a decision, they go back to their auditors, or they go back to one of the big global consulting firms. And those consulting firms don't know of little Allsop in Northern Ireland. So I give you one instance. We were tendering for a piece of work in the US. We were competing with McKinsey, and we were competing with Bain. We beat them on technology, beat them both on technology. When it came to the next step of that risk assessment, one smart comment was that the company concerned spent more in their Christmas than we turn over. And at that point, we had to step out of that process. And McKinsey and Bain then went on to fight out that global project. So it was very, from a vanity perspective, we were flattered that our technology was winning, but disappointed that we couldn't go any further. So maybe there's an opportunity for partnering, maybe there's an opportunity for getting us in with those consulting firms. But that would be a personal challenge that we're facing at the minute. Outside of that, Edge, as you mentioned, and Invest support us with structuring our business, key people, training our people, supporting our R&D. It's all fabulous stuff that's growing our business and has taken us to where we are. Our ambition now over the next 5 years is to be the largest supplier of autonomous request management. And to do that, we need to start getting into the headlines with people like McKinsey, Bain, and so on.
Okay, great. Naomi?
I think there's two areas. One thing that was fantastic for us this year is we were part of an Innovate UK GBIP program, and you were able to go out, connect with other people so we had UK companies all out to Las Vegas and San Francisco, and that was great to connect with other innovators that were across different sectors, but that starts that discussion. And instead of it being there is a big difference of being in person instead of an online call. In comparison, our Women in Innovation program, it was during COVID, so it was obviously virtual, but we didn't get the same connections with our cohort of incredible innovators. So having like 6-7 days as a really curated group, all of us in health tech had really big outcomes. So I think there's a massive power of more in-person curated networking events because the GBIP was so successful for us. And then as well as that, I think there's the ability to have smaller pots of money quicker decisions, because sometimes within startups, a decision can happen or an opportunity can happen very, very quickly, and you potentially need to change funding. So there's sometimes the need for small pots of money for a last minute opportunity, such as if somebody's asked to speak on a panel at a certain conference, it would be good if they can be supported quickly with less paperwork to allow that opportunity to also highlight the UK. As you said,
for a lot of places, whenever we go to speak, we're asked where we're from like 10 times. They don't really understand. If you were to say that you're a company from Northern Ireland, they're not sure, where are you from? So we change it every time. So I think there's the need to actually shout about the innovation that's happening here, instead of right now being associated as only in London. And I think that is a big difference, because it's deemed as if you're based in London, there's great innovation, but we need to actually show the innovation that's happening here. So we need people from here on a global stage talking about it, instead of having to be in the back corner.
Yes, totally on with that.
If I could maybe, I think one thing that Northern Ireland's really good at is networking. And we're really good at working with each other. And one of the asks I would have maybe of Invest is that we create network groups of like alumni, if that's the right term. So we have a young guy at the minute on the Grad the Export, and I'm saying to him, build your network with your current peers. And then what about the cohort that went before, and before that, and before that? And what about the cohorts that are coming, and all the new people that are coming? How do you create a network of those people that have all been through that course, they've all had that experience? Years ago, I think Invest had a business improvement agent program, and I remember ringing Invest and saying, do me a favor, give me the name of all those BIA guys, because they're the guys that are going to buy from me. And of course, Invest were going, catch yourself on. You can't have a list of names and numbers and emails, and how you can't market to those guys directly. And I'm going, but business improvement guys are the people I need to speak to. So I appreciate there's all that sensitivity around data and sensitivity and GDPR, etc. But even if there were those networking groups run and you held those people together and then sell booths to promote products at those events, to help fund those events. But I'm a really keen networker locally, but that doesn't help my export business. But if for the younger people coming through, if they could network and grow those networks, and if Invest were to facilitate that, I think that'd be a very valuable thing.
Yeah, I think it raises that the benefit of doing that, the networking, but also of identifying where is it that the people that you want to speak to, where are they? Are they already in a group? How can you access that group? Maybe not by trying to persuade Invest NI to give you a list of names and email addresses, but when are they having a meetup? Is there a networking event? How can you get involved in that?
Just for clarity, they didn't give me the list.
Yeah. Well done. I'm glad we haven't just revealed a GDPR breach on big event.
So I'll just pick up on what Ian was saying there. And I know Steve talked earlier about innovation being place-based innovation, and what that I think allows you to do is create that cluster with it by being a matchmaker and bringing companies that maybe share something in common, whether it's to share a market, whether they share a technology space, whether they just share a desire to go out and export, bring them together into a cluster, and then that might allow the likes of Invest or Innovate UK to promote that cluster more effectively. The sort of thing that we're thinking about might be a trade mission type of a deal, or even bring and meet the buyer, where you bring the buyer to us, those kind of things, because you're quite right, access to market. I worked in Silicon Valley for a while, and it was much easier. You could jump in the car and go up the road and speak to VMware, or speak to Splunk, or speak to whoever was you needed to, because they were all there in the place. We don't really have that yet in Northern Ireland. You do a bit in London, but not here. So having some support to take groups to the buyer, or bring the buyer to us, is a potential way to help us create more. Create more business, and doing it as a group as opposed to doing it as an individual company gives you you can theme it, and you can maybe make it more attractive to the buyers on the other side.
Yeah, and we are doing more of that, and Paul mentioned that we've got this new Launchpad program that's at the moment we're supporting this cluster in the health and life sciences industry cluster in Northern Ireland, and part of that. So Paul was mentioning about the funding for businesses that's part of that. But the other part that we didn't talk about is that there's money for a cluster management role, essentially, for that cluster. And we've got a whole load of other things that we're going to wrap around that. So it's exactly to that point. How can we get that critical mass from working with a cluster of similar businesses or businesses operating in the same sort of sector, and how can we really use that to create that critical mass and really then leverage in the investment, the trade opportunities, all those other things. So we're still at the start of that journey, but that's definitely what we want to do more of.
Yeah, well, that's good. So a pitch for the NI Cyber Cluster. We've got a very active cybersecurity cluster here in NI, and we're trying to do a lot of those kind of things. So some support for those clusters, I think, would be brilliant. It would be a good step.